Okay, let's get going on our leaf project. You should have in the downloaded project I provided for you this folder, and if we look inside of here, we have scenes, there's leaf start, and if we go into images, we also have our PSD, so we'll want to make sure that that is open as well. Aside from that, let's make sure that we set our project up correctly. So let's go to make sure under File, Set Project, we have Leaf Project set, and that is the unzipped project folder that I provided for you guys. It's very important that you follow along to that. Okay, I'm going to set that, and for a second, let's just look at this thing. This is a bunch of planes that have a bend modifier applied to them. I move them around. If we look at our UV editor, we'll notice this is what it is. It's this chunk of polygons, and it is going across on the horizontal axis. It's going from 0 to 1, and you'll notice it's actually not filling the whole thing up here. We have a lot of space up from 0 to 1 on this direction. That's kind of wasted space, and in class we'll talk about why that's not a great idea to do for a texture map, but for this is fine. So let's see what our PSD is provided for us, and we're going to go inside of our Photoshop file. Okay, so when you open up your Photoshop file, it should look like this. We have inside of our layers, layers, we have our leaf template. We have 4 different types of leaves to choose from. We have this leaf, that leaf, this leaf, and this leaf to choose from. So we want to choose one of these things to generate a texture from. So once we know the one that we want, I'll stick with this one for now. I'm going to right click and duplicate that layer, and I'm going to call this leaf color. I'm going to move that up and out, and you're going to know it's out of there when it has that like little line that shows up here, and that's popped out of my leaf templates, so I don't even need to see these anymore. So I'll hit that eyeball to hide it, and I'm going to work with this one to generate a color map for my leaves in Maya. So to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is go over to my magic wand tool. It's this one right here. And what I'm going to try and do is basically just select across my object to get that. Now, the magic wand tool, it may not select exactly the way we want it to. My tolerance is set to 5. If I go to 30, let's see what that does. Okay, that's giving me a little bit of a better selection. However, Magic Wand is kind of dumb compared to the tool that I'm about to use, which is called the Quick Selection tool. Magic Wand kind of tries to group things based on the appearance and the color. The Quick Selection tool kind of tries to group it together a little bit better here. So you'll notice as I drag by holding down my left mouse button across this leaf, it's grabbing more and more data. Okay, I'm almost across this whole thing. And even if you screw up like this, don't worry. What I'm going to do is first, on the open bracket key, I'm going to press that a few times to reduce the size of it. Now I'm going to hold down Alt, and you'll notice a little plus button inside of my cursor is going to turn to minus. And what that does essentially is allows for me to subtract from my selection. So now I'm going to keep going. Okay. And I'm going to see if I can grab that stem a little bit too. So deselect when you don't need certain things and select when you got it. Okay, this is okay. If I zoom in, I'm going to hit the Z on the keyboard and then click towards the area I want to zoom in. You'll notice I'm missing some stuff, but I'm going to show you a quick way that we can clean that up in a second. So this is good. I'm going to make a mask. So to make a mask, I'm going to go to my layers, and I'm going to press this button. If we press this button, it's an add a layer mask, and it basically is a black and white mask. Anything that's white is going to appear in the mask, and anything is black will disappear. So that's looking pretty good. What I'm going to do now is, with the mask selected, I'm going to go into my brush tool, and again, open bracket to make it smaller. And I'm going to switch my colors. Right now I'm using black. I want to use white. So I'm going to hit X on my keyboard. It'll switch the colors. Or you could just hit this button. So I have white. I'm going to paint in some areas that I kind of missed with my selection tool. It's not looking too bad there. I just want to clean up some spots that might seem a little bit like they disappeared. If you have a Wacom tablet, it's a lot easier to use this, or any sort of drawing tablet. It's smoother than a mouse, certainly. Going to give you a little bit faster, cleaner results here. Let me just keep going until I have what I feel is a good representation of a leaf, or at least a silhouette of that. And take your time, make sure that you get it so you don't have any extra pieces that are in there like that. And just clean up this edge a little bit here. And you'll notice the brush gives me a more refined edge compared to that quick selection, and that's because the quick selection was grabbing pixels, whereas my brush is set to a 15 hard round pressure, so it's a little bit crisper of an edge for me. Okay, almost there. Just want to make this as clean as possible. It's a good idea to make sure we have that stem and we have it going all the way to the edge of our space here on the texture map. And I'll show you why in a second here. And I'm going to open bracket that to get to there. Okay. It's getting there. I would clean that up a little bit more, but for the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to say that that's okay. Now that I have this, what I'm going to do is add another layer here. So what I need to do is press this button right here, which is new layer. And I'm going to put that underneath here. Don't worry about naming this because we're going to merge this one down. Actually, we're not going to merge it. I'm going to show you a different way to do this. We're just going to change the color on this because I want to be able to have green underneath this. And for fun, let me show you what happens if I don't use green. I'm going to use, let's use bright red. I'm going to go and hit fill. Don't worry if you didn't catch all that. I just want to show you why we're going to do this. I'm going to go save as. And we're going to go into our projects. So for me, I have that on my desktop. And it is called Leaf. I need to make sure that I am going into my images folder. And I'm going to save this as a PNG. I'm going to call this Leaf Color. Okay. Now in Maya, to see this, I need to make a material. So I'm going to go into my Hypershade. And I'm going to click on Create, Materials, Blend. I'm going to give it a new name. I'm going to call this Leaf Texture. Now, I'm going to go over to my selection for my render node. I'm going to click File. I'm going to open up the image name by pressing on that folder. And I am going to go to Images, and I'm going to go to Leaf Color. I'll hit Open. Okay. I'm going to middle mouse button drag this to my image, and you'll notice I now have a bunch of leaves, but they have this red background. And that's because the leaf now is sitting properly in the UV editor. So if I look at these actual leaves here, they're sitting where they need to be, but we have all this extra space. The reason why we're going to use opacity map for this is because if we actually had polygons, there'd be more polygons for this than we should have. So it's a lot more efficient to use these polygons here to do that. So I'll show you how we get to that next step. Let's go into Maya, or sorry, Photoshop. I'm now going to make a new map, and I'm going to call that an opacity map. But before I do that, I need to make this into a folder. So I'm going to select this one and that one, and this folder is called a group, so I'm going to hit Control G on the keyboard. It makes a group. The other way to do that is to have these selected and press this button right here, and it'll make a group for you there. If I double click on this right here, this is going to be called Leaf. I'm trying to keep that consistent naming and color. And now I'm going to make another layer. So I'll hit the layer button. It added itself to your folder. So it adds itself to that group if you have that selected. So to prevent that from happening, either don't have it selected or drag that outside. Now that I have it there, I'm going to select my mask to create a selection. So if I hold down Control and click on this mask right here, you'll notice it makes a little like a cutout box shape. So if I left click on that, it'll make a selection based on my mask. And now I'm going to hide the other stuff. I'm going to go to Edit, Fill. I'm going to change this to white. I'll hit OK. I have this one. I'm going to make another layer. I'm going to go underneath that layer. I'm going to use my marquee selection tool, this one right here. Click anywhere to deselect. And I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, Black. Okay, now I need both of these, so I'm going to select this one and this one, Control G. I'm going to name this Leaf Trans, so for transparency. I'm going to save this one, File, Save As, PNG, making sure that I'm going into my folder. And now, Leaf Project. I'm going to go inside of my images and make sure that's called Leaf Trans. Okay. Now, inside of Maya, I'm going to open up my Hypershade. I'm going to go into my leaf texture, and I'm going to add transparency. So if I press this button, and press File, press Folder. Okay, it's this one right here. Hit Open. Okay. I have now a transparent leaf, but I got some problems here. There's two different issues that are going on. And one of those issues is I have this ghost going on around the edges of this. So I can actually see the polygons that are representing this leaf. I also have these red lines around there. That's because Maya and any other 3D engine isn't very great at being able to make a 100% transparency map for our object. So what we should be doing and what we should be aware of is that anytime we make a transparency map, we need to make sure that we choose a color for our leaf or our background object that's similar. So let me show you what I mean. So let me turn off my leaf transparency and go into my leaf color. Right now I have red. That's really dumb. And the reason why is because the red is going to stand out from the green. We want to use a background color that's similar to our foreground color. So what I'm going to do is try and find an average color that's around the edge of this shape. And I do have one. It's going to be a green. So what I'm going to do is hit I on my keyboard, and it's my eyedropper. I'm going to select maybe around here. And that gives me a green. If I go into my layer that's red and do Edit, Fill, and I'm going to do that by the foreground color, hit OK, and now we have this green. That's a lot better. So now if I hit File, Save As, PNG, and I go into my desktop with my leaf, and I go to my images, save over my leaf color, hit save. Okay, now it looks the way it's supposed to. I don't have that red going on there. You'll also notice that Maya automatically updated this for me. Now, to be able to have that happen, you can either have Maya relink your materials, so I'm sure you're going to find that you're going to have to keep going in the habit of reselecting your images, or it's a simple setup of going into my Windows, Settings and Preferences, and under my Files and Projects, right underneath Settings here, Files and Projects, go to Image Files and make sure Automatically Reload Updated Image Files is on. It's going to save you so much time. So make sure you do that. And now I have that gone. I still have this weird light on here. It's like that gloss. And the way we can get rid of this for now is we can go into our specular color. I'm just going to drop that down. Now if we do that, we don't have that happening. But notice another issue that's happened. It's like we're staring through space and time and we're able to see leaves that we know are clearly behind other leaves. This is a render sorting issue. This happens in every engine. What's nice is Maya finally has a way to kind of look at these things properly by going into Render, clicking on the box, and in Maya, in here, under Performance, we just need to change the transparency algorithm to depth peeling. And once we select that and close, you'll notice it's finally able to represent it the way it's supposed to. Okay, we're getting there. The next step that I have to do here is make a bump map. So to do that, I'm going to go into Photoshop, and I am going to now duplicate my leaf color. So if I right click on this and duplicate this group, I'm going to call this leaf bump. Okay. Inside of my leaf bump, my color, I'm going to go to Edit, Fill. I'm going to go black. Now, my actual leaf, I need to desaturate this thing. So what I'm going to do is go into my adjustments, and let's go into our hue saturation. I'm going to click this and drag it right, or actually just click it and have that so it pops up right above this one. It's only going to pop up there if you have this one currently selected. So make sure you have this leaf bump, leaf color selected. We should probably rename that. Okay. I'm going to go in here, press hue saturation, and I'm also going to make sure if I hold down Alt, you're going to notice it makes this little arrow key. When you hold down Alt and you click that, it's going to make sure that this adjustment is only applying specifically to that layer. That's very important. What I'm going to do is just hit drag down on my saturation, and let's see if we can kind of increase our lightness just a tad on that, because we don't need it to be super crazy there. Okay, I like that. Let's see if I could do one more thing here. I'm going to also add a brightness and contrast. I'm going to also make sure that this has the Alt key. Click on that so it links to this layer too. And I'm going to try and increase some contrast on this. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to close that up. So now I have leaf trans, leaf bump, and leaf color. These are all the things I want to see when you resubmit, or you submit your project for me. And I'm going to go to File, Save As. Again, this is PNG. And we're going to go into Leaf, Images, and this will be Leaf Bump. Okay. Now, in my leaf, I'm going to go into my settings here. And you'll notice that inside of my leaf texture, there's an area for bump mapping. I'm going to select that one. Go into File. I'm going to press the arrow key for bump value. And bump. And you'll notice that it kind of gave a bit of a bump on there. It is pretty intense. There's two different ways that we can fix that. We can either do a fix based on my exposure. So if it's under or over, it'll kind of reduce or increase how much bumpiness that's on there. Kind of hard to see if I have, there we go, maybe we can see that. It's not going to update too much there. Another thing that we could do, and the way I highly recommend doing this, don't rely on the values in here. Just go into Photoshop Let's readjust these. Now these are non-destructive. If we did that over into image adjustments, any of these things here, we wouldn't be able to remodify them. That's why we use that. So I'm going to go back to my brightness and contrast and increase my brightness. See if that's going to be a little bit better. File, save as, leaf, images, making sure we change this to PNG. We have our leaf bump, save, yes, and now okay, and let's see what that did. It's a little bit better. So we've given ourselves some texture to our plant. We've given ourselves a transparency that looks appropriate, but we lost all the glossiness. And I'm going to show you how we can give ourselves one more texture, and that is our specular color. Right now, if we look at the specular, so if we look at leaf, specular color was linked to this. And when we turn that on, right now, it makes all those pieces go invisible. And that's not very good for us. So what we're going to do, it also enhances the bumps on our object. So specular is very helpful for us, but right now this just isn't going to work because it's just too much showing the outside edges of these polygons. So we can actually make a new map based on this to make that happen, or we can actually be easy and cheesy on this and try something out here. We're going to go right click graph network. You'll notice I have this bump. I can also try to output the alpha into, no, it doesn't want to do that, my specular color. Let's see if this does it. Okay. So what I did is I grabbed the leaf bump PNG, my out color node instead of out alpha. Don't link any of those things up any other way than I just showed you. The only thing you want to do for this last step, left click, drag, specular color. So it'll go into this node. Now, we have some specular on there. It's not highly visible. You can sort of see it when the leaves move. And it also allows for me to have just a little bit of that bump showing up as well. One thing I want to try and do is just try and tone down that bump value. It seems kind of horrifying. So 0.32 maybe. We want just a little bit, but not anything that's going to look like it's rotten or something like that. So this is actually looking a little bit better. So I like that. We have some specular on our plant. We have ourselves a bump map, and we have transparency. This is really nice. This is what I want. So once you're done with your project, make sure everything's all set up. Make sure everything's labeled. And really the main thing that needs to be labeled here is that material that you created and all the stuff in Photoshop. Make sure in Photoshop that you save. So when we have all this stuff, we'll hit File, Save, and you'll save the Photoshop file. This is just like working in Maya, where in Maya you will generate a Maya file for saving. But when you need to make a movie, that output file would be like the render. So imagine the same thing with Photoshop. Your Photoshop files where you're working on that with all your layers, and then that image that you're creating, that output image that we save, that is like the final output that we use. So we need to save everything, and then after that we're going to go to File and then Archive Scene after we've saved. Once you archive that scene, I want that archive scene submitted as our project. Alright, that's it.